Hi everyone, Suzanne here. I hope you're all well and welcome to Sew Custom. Today's video is a tag one. So I haven't done a tag video before, and the reason I haven't done any tag videos is because lots and lots of them are geared towards people that sew with patterns. And because I no longer sew with patterns, I sort of shied away from all of the tags. But I decided today to do this particular tag because lots of you are new here. Lots of you asked me loads of the questions that are all contained in this tag. So I thought I could kill two birds with one stone, do the tag and answer all of your questions. So if you're interested in seeing that, then let's get started. So this tag in particular has been knocking around for quite the while. I think back whenever I first started sewing, searching under any sewing terms, this tag came up over and over again, which was really great for me because it got me to know lots of different vloggers and lots of different types of vloggers within the sewing community as well, which again was really good for me. Some based on technique, some based on more of a chatty style, just a wide and varied range of videos, which I thought at the time was absolutely fantastic. So really good for getting into sewing. The tag itself was created by a young lady named Holly. If I can find her details, I shall link them down below. There are lots and lots of you that are now new to this channel and ask me lots of the questions that are included in this tag. So I have them in front of me. There are 12 questions and I'll kick off with question number 1, which is, who are you? So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Suzanne. I'm from the north of Ireland. I absolutely love everything sewing related. So there's barely a day goes by that I don't do something sewing related, whether that is making a pattern, reading about new techniques, watching sewing videos, or sewing myself. As you can see, I have a YouTube channel. I upload to that every Friday, usually sewing videos on how I sewed up this dress, for example, or how I pattern something, beginner patterning techniques, beginner sewing techniques, just things that I have learnt myself that I'm passing on. So for question number 2, when and why did you start sewing? So this could be a very long answer. I shall try to keep it as succinct as possible. So I started in 2015. I tried to sew or tried to get into sewing long before that. So my husband had very kindly booked me on a few courses, all of which were cancelled last minute. So this was at the local college, and if there weren't enough people that had signed up for the course, they would just cancel it last minute. So that was always a disappointment. I then discovered YouTube in this area, which was a revelation to me. So I used YouTube at the start to try and sort of teach myself a little bit, found a few books, was just picking up things here and there, but I really dove into it in around about, as I say, 2015. So the reasons why I started sewing are very lengthy. So the first one is fashion, really. So if you're shopping for clothes, ready to wear clothes, you are dictated to by the season, by the designer. And I just hated being dictated to what I could wear that season, what was fashionable, what was trendy. I hate that. So although I do love some fashionable bits and bobs, I don't like being in with the trend. I'm just not into that at all. Also, fit was a huge thing for me. So generally I could find a shop that fitted me well, but I couldn't find then the length that I wanted. I couldn't find the V that I wanted that sat just where I wanted it to sit, the length of sleeve I wanted, the fit around the waist. There was just, I always had to compromise. And I'm sure lots and lots of you will understand this and will have experienced exactly the same thing. And I wanted to start sewing because I didn't want to have to compromise. And really that's it. I was compromising on fabric, I was compromising on fit, compromising on finish even, So I used to spend quite a lot of money on clothes. So I used to wear suits and stuff to work. So that was like one wardrobe. Then my casual wardrobe as well. And with every single piece, I would say probably in my wardrobe, I only had maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 things that I didn't have to compromise on. So 4 or 5 things that had the right fabric, that had the right finish, that had the right fit, the right length, all of that. And I just really wanted to not have to compromise. So that is why I started sewing. So I'm just listening here because my neighbour just had their grass cut. I'm hoping that they've now finished. I haven't heard anything in a minute or two, so I'll try this again. So if the camera angle has moved or if I have moved, that is the reason why. But we're on to number 3. So what is your favourite or your proudest make? This again could be a really long answer. Again, I shall try and keep it short. But my proudest make is every single thing that I make. So I love everything that I've made when I've made it. So I'll learn something new generally with everything I make, and that is the bit that I really enjoy. So for the sake of completeness, I'll pop in a few examples, but these definitely aren't a complete list of my proudest makes or my favourite makes. These are just a variety of makes which I absolutely love. So the first one is one that took me quite the while to do. It took a lot of research, a lot of toiles, and a lot of work to complete. And it was my Chanel style jacket. And the reason why I love this so much is because of all of that research, all of the work went into it. I learnt an absolute ton making this jacket. And as I say, that's the thing that I really enjoy about sewing, learning something new with every single make. As a complete contrast to that, this is another one which I absolutely love. This only has 3 pattern pieces. It's a jersey wrap dress, the most basic jersey wrap dress. And I love this because it's a quick throw on, super comfortable dress, but also it's a super quick make. I'll pop in a little montage here of lots of things that I have made. As I say, when I make things, I tend to love them straight away. Of course I have my trials and tribulations along the way, but when it's finished, I generally love the fact that I've learned something, that I've produced something that I can hold, that I can wear, that I can feel comfortable in. So no one favourite or no one proudest, just the love of everything at different stages. So for question number 4, this is a really good one. So what is your most disastrous make? So I can't say that I've had a single disastrous make. I have many many disastrous makes. I would say a good probably 50% of the time I have a disaster with each of my makes. So that could be sewing the wrong pieces together, sewing something in the wrong order, not finishing the seams correctly, patterning incorrectly, resulting in a bad or disastrous make. But I generally test those things out on toiles or mock-ups of a design that I'm making. So the disasters are really contained in that area rather than the final version. Those of you that have been here for a while will know my entire process and know how I work from pattern right through to end design. So as I say, my disasters are generally contained in the mock-up process, but I still have had some disastrous moments during the final version. Again, those of you that have been here for a while will know. So on to question number 5. So for number 5, where is your favourite place to go fabric shopping? So as I said at the beginning, I live in the north of Ireland. and we really have very, very limited places to go for fabric shopping in person. So when I first started sewing, there were 3 shops. Now there's only 1 shop that I know of anyway, and that 1 shop is miles away from me. The shop itself, it's a bit of a mismatch, if you like, of lots of different sections. So it's a very old shop. The setting of it isn't very nice. So it's in an industrial estate, but I really, really appreciate the fact that I can go in and feel all of the fabrics. So it might not be the most pleasant experience, the whole drive down, the area that it's set in, the setup of the shop, but all of that is overridden by the fact I can touch the fabric. Apart from that, online, my favourite online shop is Guthrie & Ganny, and I've spoke about this shop in the past. The reason why I like it so much is because their fabrics are generally, like in the main, beautiful. They generally have fabrics that other shops don't have. Their delivery is really good. Lauren, the young lady that owns and runs the shop, she will do videos on her latest fabrics. So she'll touch the fabric, she'll give you a look at how they flow, whether there's lots of structure in them, whether they've got lots of drape. I just really like that there's lots and lots of supplementary information for each of her fabrics. So it's not just going online, seeing a picture and ordering and hoping for the best, which is what I do at a lot of other shops. So yeah, Guthrie & Ganny online, but my preferred method would be to shop in person if I had the opportunity more here in the north of Ireland. So for question number 6, what is your most used pattern? So as I mentioned at the start, I generally sew from blocks and draft my own patterns, but way back at the start I sewed from commercial patterns, and one of the commercial patterns I really, really loved was this one. So this is the Burda 6730, and I'm not sure if this was my most used pattern, but this is 100% my type of thing. I really like this. It only has 3 pattern pieces. It's a wrap dress. It's for stretch fabric, and you can see from the sleeve here it has 2 different lengths, a more sort of casual day length, and then a more, from the cover, looks a little bit more formal. I kept mine quite casual, but I always went for the longer length. I don't think I ever sewed it up as it's shown here in view A or B. I always straightened out that front skirt piece. I didn't like where it crossed over at the center front. It was just a little bit too much leg showing for me. But this is so easy, so quick. So I don't think this is my most used pattern, but it's definitely up there with the top ones that I absolutely loved when I was sewing from commercial patterns. I would highly recommend this one. And then from drafting, my most favorite block, those of you that have been here for a while will know, is this one. So this is the cap sleeve kimono block. I drafted it following the steps laid out in this book. I've used this block over and over and over again. It has those grown on sleeves, which I adore. And this one is for wovens. I've made many items using this block as a starting point. I'll pop in again a little montage just so that you guys can see how this looks when it's sewn up. And if you're thinking of getting into drafting yourself and you want to do it from blocks, I would highly recommend this one. This is standalone. You don't need to have any other blocks in order to draft this one. And if you follow the steps laid out in the book, again, which I would highly recommend, it's quite straightforward. And then using this, as I say, as a starting point, you could come up with many different designs. And then for question number 7, your most dreaded sewing task is... So when I first started, putting in zips was an absolute nightmare for me. I hated it, because I felt as if I'd got so far in the make, and if this bit went wrong, I had wasted all of the work previous. But as per my answer to the previous question in terms of disasters, getting out of that disaster, i.e. the terrible zip insertion, is always a really good learning experience. But I hated that at the start. I hated buttonholes, and I hated doing buttonholes because the machine that I used to use when I started, it wasn't the best at sewing up buttonholes. The fabric underneath wasn't as secure as you'd want it to be under the foot, and therefore the buttonholes wouldn't come out just as straight as you'd want them. There would always be a little wonky bit, which was always very annoying. And for a buttonhole, as opposed to the zip, it's very hard to recover a buttonhole if it's just went in a disastrous way. So I really hated those. I hated also, actually, for buttons and buttonholes, having to make the decision on the thread. So what thread to use that would either complement the fabric, blend into the fabric. I always really struggled with that at the very start. Of course now it's much easier, but back then I hated those two tasks. Now I'm not too bad at either of those, but that's only because I have had many goes at doing it, and many goes at failing at both of those things. And for question number 8, in stark contrast to the last, what is your favourite sewing task? So I'm not sure I have a favourite sewing task. This is going to get really repetitive, but I love everything to do with sewing. So I love each task I have to do for different reasons. So I like a bit of hand sewing, just to sort of calm the head and relax. I quite like that. I like a bit of pressing. I like that because, again, it's nice calming for the head. Nice creases are very pleasing to me. I love a good finish on the inside of a garment. So seam finishes would be up on my list. Hem finishing for exactly the same reason. So I would say overall, my, in general, favourite sewing task is making the inside of the garment look as good, if that is possible, as the outside of the garment. I love that. And for question number 9, what is your favourite sewing entertainment? So this is going to be a pretty quick answer. So I don't have any sewing entertainment. I've never really listened to anything in the background, had my computer on, none of that. And I think that stems back to when I started. I was concentrating so hard on getting whatever the task was right, I just didn't want to have anything else around me. Now though, I absolutely love just the quietness of sewing. I love it. So you could have a really terrible day at work, come home, pop a bit of fabric under the foot of the machine, making something you hope will be beautiful in the sereneness of the sewing machine whirring. So I absolutely love that. And number 10 is printed or PDF patterns. So this doesn't really apply to me as of now, but back at the beginning I did sew from both PDF and printed patterns. I really preferred, well, I didn't really mind either, but there's a lot more effort and work required in putting together a PDF pattern. I didn't enjoy that process, not one bit. So I think if I was pushed, it would definitely be patterns, printed patterns. So we're coming towards the end. Question number 11 is, what sewing machine do you use? So I took a little bit of footage earlier. So this first one is the first machine that my husband very kindly bought for me. And this machine was super inexpensive. I think I used it for probably about a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. It did me really well. It's super basic. And as I mentioned earlier, buttonholes with this machine was not great, but it did the job. The main reason why I changed from this machine to the next one I'm going to show is because the motor on this one isn't that powerful. And because it's not that powerful, it's very hard to sew something that's a little bit thicker. Yes, it'll get through the fabric, but I felt at the time that I was sort of fighting with the fabric to get it through the machine, rather than it being a lovely, pleasant experience going through the machine, like it is with my current model, which is this one. So I've had this now for a good wee bit of time. It has lots of bells and whistles on it, most of which I don't use, I have to say. But the motor on this one is much more powerful than the previous little beginner version I showed. I feel as if I can really rely on this machine. There's nothing that I've come across yet that it struggles with. I've sewn really thick, heavy coats on this machine and they've went through it like a dream. I've equally sewn really flimsy fabrics on this machine, and again, the machine has held up so well. So the first machine I showed, I think it was about £70, something like that. This machine, I think it was either £499 or £599, which is a huge leap, but I definitely think well worth the leap. And I didn't buy this one until I knew that I absolutely loved sewing and I was going to continue doing it well into my later years. So I didn't want to fork out quite a lot of money on something that I was only going to use every now and again. And then the third machine that I use is this one. So this is my Overlocker. I've had this one, I couldn't tell you when I bought it, probably about 6 months or so after I started sewing. But this is such a great little workhorse. So it's never broken down. It's had a few issues with the dials being a little bit loose and the tension being a little bit loose. I've had to change the blade on it. But apart from that, this machine is so good. It's not the most expensive machine, it's not the cheapest machine, but it's a really good, middle of the road, reliable overlocker. So I would highly recommend this machine. The previous brother, I wouldn't necessarily recommend the first machine that I showed, simply because there are so many other good beginner machines on the market. I would do a little bit more research than I did for the first machine. So the last question is, do you have any other hobbies? So pre-COVID I did. They have completely stopped since COVID, and I'm just not ready yet to get back to each of these. So the first one is badminton. My husband and I used to play badmintons probably a couple of times a week. That was really good fun. And swimming. So I would have went swimming in the mornings before work. So I did that for years. And then when my work life changed, I just went swimming as often as possible. And the swimming for me was such a good setup for the day. I loved sort of going through what my day entailed, how I was going to handle that situation, how I was going to deal with that, what my order of tasks would be for the day, all of that sort of stuff. And then by the time I was showered and ready, I was completely relaxed and ready to go into work. I really loved that. So hopefully, like, we're post-COVID here. I don't know if there is such a thing as post-COVID, but our restrictions are more or less lifted here, and the gyms are open and the pools are opened, but I'm just not ready to go back just yet. I miss both of those things immensely though. So that's it. That is the Seamstress Tag. And as I said at the beginning, if you are new to vlogging, or indeed if you have done this tag in the past but it was way back, do it again. I would love to watch how people have changed over this number of years, if you're still vlogging, that is. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful and maybe a bit interesting. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, please do, and I shall see you on Friday. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic week. Bye, folks!